Station Omega-7 floated in the dark space between stars like a giant metal city. Lights blinked on its surface as ships came and went. Inside the station, the air was thick with the sounds of different alien voices speaking in languages that humans were still learning to understand. Jake Morrison walked beside his father through the busy marketplace. The 16-year-old boy had never seen so many strange creatures in one place. His father, Captain Bill Morrison, was a trader who brought goods from Earth to sell in the far corners of space. This was Jake's first trip off Earth, and everything amazed him. "Stay close, son," Bill said, his hand resting on Jake's shoulder. "This place can be dangerous if you don't know the rules." Jake nodded, but his eyes kept wandering. To his left, a group of Vex merchants clicked and buzzed as they examined shiny metal parts. Their insect-like bodies moved in quick, jerky motions. Their large compound eyes reflected the station's lights like broken mirrors. To his right, tall Zephyrians floated a few inches off the ground. Their bodies seemed to be made of flowing light and mist. They spoke in voices that sounded like wind chimes, but it was the Krillians that made Jake's heart beat faster. These creatures stood nearly 9 feet tall and looked like they were built for war. Their bodies were covered in thick, dark armor that grew from their skin like the shell of a crab. Each Krillian had 4 powerful arms that ended in clawed hands. Their heads were small compared to their massive bodies, but their eyes glowed with a red light that made Jake think of angry fires. "The Krillians are the police of space," Bill explained in a quiet voice. "They work for the Galactic Commerce Authority. They keep order in places like this, but they don't like humans very much. They think we're weak because we're smaller than them." Jake watched as a group of Krillian soldiers marched through the marketplace. Other aliens stepped aside quickly to let them pass. Even the proud Zephyrians moved out of their way. The Krillians walked like they owned the station, and maybe they did. The Morrison family business was simple. They bought things on Earth that aliens wanted and traded them for things that people on Earth needed. It was honest work, but it meant traveling to places where humans were not always welcome. "Dad, look at that," Jake said, pointing to a stall where an alien with purple skin was selling what looked like glowing fruit. "Those are Nexus berries," Bill said. "They taste like honey, but they give you energy for a week. Your mother would love them, but they cost more than our whole cargo hold is worth." As they walked deeper into the station, Jake felt like he was in a dream. Everything was so different from Earth. The walls were made of metal that seemed to change color as the light hit it. The air smelled like ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. Strange music played from hidden speakers, mixing melodies from dozens of different worlds. They were heading toward the docking bay, where their ship was parked, when Jake saw something that made him stop walking. Small alien child, no bigger than a human 5-year-old, was crying near a food stall. The child had blue skin and large golden eyes filled with tears. "Dad, that kid looks lost," Jake said. Bill looked where his son was pointing. "That's a Altair youngster. Their parents are probably nearby." But Jake was already walking toward the crying child, knelt down next to the small alien, and spoke in the basic galactic language he had been learning. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The child looked up at Jake with those big golden eyes and said something in a language Jake didn't understand. But the meaning was clear. The child was scared and alone. Jake looked around and saw 2 adult Altairs searching frantically. Near another stall, he waved to get their attention and pointed to the child. Relief flooded their faces as they rushed over. "Thank you, human," one of them said in broken English. Our little one wandered off. Jake smiled as the family reunited. It felt good to help someone, even on this strange station so far from home. But as Jake stood up and turned to rejoin his father, he walked straight into something that felt like a wall. He bounced backward and looked up to see a massive Krillian soldier towering over him. This one was even bigger than the others Jake had seen. His armor was darker and had marks on it that probably meant he was important. Commander Thackerell looked down at the human boy with disgust. In his culture, physical contact without permission was a serious insult. This small, weak creature had dared to touch him. The fact that it was an accident didn't matter. Disrespect was disrespect.
Act stupid, human.
Thackerel growled in a voice like grinding stone. You dare to touch a Krillian commander? Jake's heart pounded as he looked up at the alien. He was so big that Jake had to crane his neck just to see his face. The Krillian's red eyes burned with anger. I'm sorry, Jake said quickly. I didn't see you. It was an accident. But the coral had already decided that this human needed to learn a lesson. Humans were weak. They were new to space and thought they could do whatever they wanted. It was time to show this boy and everyone watching what happened when you disrespected a Krillian. Sorry is not enough, the Kurl said. Before Jake could move, before he could even think, the Krillian's massive hand swept through the air. The backhand hit Jake like a sledgehammer. The sound of the impact echoed through the marketplace like a gunshot. Jake flew backward through the air. His body hit a metal support beam with a sickening crack. Then he fell to the floor and didn't move. The marketplace went completely silent. Dozens of aliens from different worlds stopped what they were doing and stared. The cheerful sounds of trading and conversation died away. Even the background music seemed to get quieter. Bill Morrison ran to his son and dropped to his knees beside him. Jake's head was turned at a wrong angle. Blood was already forming a dark pool on the metal floor. The boy's eyes were closed and he wasn't breathing. Jake, Bill shouted, his voice breaking. Jake, can you hear me? But there was no answer. Jake Morrison lay still as death. Dr. Elena Ross, the station's human medic, pushed through the crowd. With her medical kit, she knelt beside Jake and checked for a pulse. Her face went pale when she saw the damage. Get me a medical stretcher, she called to her assistant. Now, as the medical team worked to move Jake's body, Commander Thackerel stood over them with his arms crossed. He felt no guilt about what he had done. The human boy had learned a lesson, even if he would never remember it. Let this be a warning to all humans, Thackerel announced in a loud voice. Respect the Krillian Empire, or face the consequences. Other aliens in the marketplace said nothing. They had seen Krillian justice before. It was always swift and brutal. Humans were new to space and still learning how things worked out here. Now they knew. Bill Morrison followed the medical team as they carried his son to the station's hospital. His hands shook as he activated his communication device. This is Captain Morrison, he said in a voice thick with emotion. I need to speak. To Earth Command immediately. It's about my son. It's urgent. Behind him, the marketplace slowly returned to normal. Aliens went back to their trading and conversations. But they all remembered what they had seen. They remembered the sound of the human boy's skull cracking against metal. They remembered how still and broken he looked. None of them expected to see Jake Morrison alive again. The medical bay of Station Omega-7 was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Dr. Elena Ross sat at her desk, staring at the scan results on her computer screen. She had been a doctor for 20 years, but she had never seen anything like this. 2 hours ago, Jake Morrison had been brought to her with his skull cracked open like an egg. His brain had been severely damaged. Blood had pooled inside his head. By every medical standard she knew, the boy should have been dead before they even got him to the medical bay. But now, Jake Morrison was sitting up on the examination table asking for a glass of water. How do you feel? Dr. Ross asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Fine, Jake said, touching the back of his head where the injury had been. Actually, I feel better than fine. I feel really good. Like I could run a marathon or something. Dr. Ross looked at her computer screen again. The latest scan showed Jake's skull was completely whole. There were no cracks, no fractures, no sign that anything had ever been wrong. The brain scans were even more puzzling. Not only was there no damage, but Jake's brain activity was higher than she had ever seen in a human. Jake, do you remember what happened? She asked. The big alien hit me, Jake said simply. I remember flying backward and hitting something hard. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was here. Bill Morrison sat in a chair next to the examination table. His eyes were red from crying, but now they were filled with confusion. Instead of grief, his son had been dying, and now he was acting like nothing had happened. Doctor, I don't understand, Bill said. When we brought him in, you said his skull was fractured in 12 places. You said his brain was bleeding. How is he sitting here talking to us? Dr. Ross had no answer. She had taken pictures of Jake's injuries when he first arrived. The damage had been terrible. She had seen similar injuries before, and they were always fatal. But somehow, Jake's body had repaired itself completely. "I need to run more tests," she said. "Jake, would you mind if I took some blood samples? I want to make sure everything is really okay." Jake nodded. He felt strange, but not in a bad way. It was like every part of his body was working better than before. His vision was sharper. He could hear conversations happening in the hallway outside the medical bay. Even his sense of smell was stronger. He could tell what Dr. Ross had eaten for lunch just by being near her. As Dr. Ross drew blood from Jake's arm, she noticed something odd. His skin felt different, tougher somehow. When she pressed the needle against his arm, it took more pressure than usual to break the skin. "Jake, has your skin always been this thick?" she asked. Jake looked at his arm. "I don't think so. Is something wrong?" Before Dr. Ross could answer, her assistant came running into the room. "Doctor, you need to see this. The news feeds are going crazy." Dr. Ross looked at the portable screen her assistant handed her. News broadcasts from across the galaxy were all talking about the same thing. A human boy on Station Omega-7 had been killed by a Krillian commander and then somehow come back to life. "The whole galaxy is watching us," her assistant said. "Captains are changing course just to come see if it's true. The Krillian High Command has issued a statement saying it's impossible." Jake listened to the news reports with growing amazement. They were talking about him like he was some kind of miracle. Some of the alien reporters were calling him the undying human. Others were saying it proved that humans were more than they appeared to be. "Dad, are we going to be in trouble?" Jake asked. Bill Morrison put his hand on his son's shoulder. The boy felt different under his touch, stronger somehow. "I don't know, son. But I think we need to get you home to Earth as soon as possible." Dr. Ross continued her tests throughout the afternoon. Jake's bone density had increased by 300%. His muscle fibers had restructured themselves to be more efficient. His reflexes were now faster than any human she had ever tested. Most surprising of all, Jake's blood work showed genetic markers that Dr. Ross had never seen before. It was like his DNA had activated parts of itself that had been sleeping. "I want you to try something," Dr. Ross said. She handed him a small metal bar. "Squeeze this as hard as you can." Jake took the bar and squeezed. The metal bent like it was made of clay. He looked at his hands in surprise. "I didn't mean to break it," he said. "You didn't break it," Dr. Ross said quietly. "You reshaped it. That bar was made of reinforced steel. It should take a machine to bend it like that." Word of Jake's recovery spread through the station like wildfire. Aliens who had witnessed the attack came to the medical bay to see for themselves. They pressed against the windows, speaking in dozens of different languages, all trying to understand what they were seeing. The Vex merchants chittered excitedly among themselves. In their culture, rapid healing was a sign of divine favor. The Zephyrians floated near the walls, their misty forms shimmering with what might have been awe or fear. Even the usually calm Altaires gathered in small groups, whispering about what this meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. But it was the reaction of the Krillians that worried Dr. Ross the most. Commander Thackerel and his soldiers had been watching the medical bay from across the corridor. Their red eyes glowed brighter than usual, and they spoke in low, angry voices. "The Krillians don't look happy," Bill observed. "They shouldn't be," Dr. Ross said. "Their entire culture is built on the idea that they're the strongest, toughest species in the galaxy. If humans can survive what killed Jake and come back stronger, it changes everything." As evening fell on the station, Jake felt more changes happening to his body. His hearing had become so sharp that he could hear conversations 3 levels away. His vision had improved so much that he could see tiny details on objects across the room, but the most noticeable change was in his awareness. Jake felt like he could sense everything around him. He knew when people were approaching the medical bay before they appeared. He could tell when Dr. Ross was about to ask him a question before she spoke. Dr. Jake said suddenly, "We need to leave the station soon. Something bad is coming." Dr. Ross looked at him with concern. "What do you mean?" "I can feel it," Jake said, though he couldn't explain how. "The Krillians are planning something. They're angry and scared, and that makes them dangerous." Bill Morrison had been thinking the same thing. He had contacted Earth Command hours ago and was waiting for instructions. The response finally came through on his private communication device. "Dad, what did Earth say?" Jake asked. Bill read the message with growing concern. "They want us to come home immediately. They're sending a fast ship to pick us up." And Jake, "They mentioned something called Operation Lazarus." "What's Operation Lazarus?" Jake asked. "I don't know," Bill said. "But they said to tell you that you're not the first." Dr. Ross looked up from her computer screen where she had been analyzing. "Jake's test results?" "Not the first what?" "The message doesn't say," Bill replied. "But they want Jake back on Earth as soon as possible. He said there are things we need to know about human genetics that have been kept secret." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Even though his body temperature had been running higher than normal since his recovery, whatever Operation Lazarus was, it sounded like his experience wasn't as unique as they had thought. "Doctor, can I ask you something?" Jake said. "Of course." "In all your years as a doctor, have you ever heard of a human healing from injuries like mine?" Dr. Ross was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "There have been stories. Who survived impossible wounds. People who walked away from accidents that should have killed them. But the reports were always classified or dismissed as exaggerations." "What if they weren't exaggerations?" Jake asked. Before Dr. Ross could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and an automated voice announced that all civilians should return to their quarters immediately. Through the medical bay windows, you could see Krillian soldiers marching through the corridors in full battle gear. Commander Thackerell led them, his forearms carrying weapons that hummed with energy. "They're coming for me," Jake said with certainty. Bill Morrison stood up and moved protectively in front of his son. "We need to get to our ship." As they prepared to leave the medical bay, Jake felt something new stirring inside him. It wasn't fear. It was something much more dangerous. For the first time in his life, Jake Morrison felt truly angry, and with his new abilities, that anger felt like a weapon waiting to be used. The boy who had died 2 hours ago was gone forever. What walked in his place was something the galaxy had never seen before. The Earth's rescue ship arrived at Station Omega-7 just as the Krillian soldiers began their search. Captain Bill Morrison and Jake barely made it to the docking bay before Commander Thackerell's forces sealed off the station. As their small transport ship pulled away from the station, Jake watched through the window as more Krillian warships arrived. "They're really angry," Jake said, his enhanced vision allowing him to see the weapons being prepared on the alien ships. "They have good reason to be," said Commander Alex Carter, the pilot of their rescue ship. "What happened to you has scared every military leader in the galaxy. If humans can come back from the dead stronger than before, it changes everything about how wars are fought." The journey to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Jake discovered more changes in his body, and he needed less sleep and less food than before. His mind worked faster, solving problems that used to take him hours in just minutes. Most strangely, he sometimes knew things before anyone told him, as if information was flowing into his brain from somewhere else. When they finally arrived at Earth, Jake expected to go home to his family. Instead, their ship was directed to a military base hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains. As they descended through clouds toward a landing pad that seemed to be carved right into the mountainside, Jake felt nervous for the first time since his awakening. "Where are we?" he asked his father. "I don't know," Bill admitted. "But the people who called us here seem to know more about what happened to you than we do." The landing pad was inside a huge cave that had been turned into a military facility. Soldiers with advanced weapons watched as Jake and his father were escorted through corridors that stretched deep underground. The walls were made of metal and stone, and Jake could hear the hum of powerful machines somewhere. In the distance, they were brought to a large room filled with computers and display screens. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls, marked with symbols Jake didn't recognize. In the center of the room stood a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He wore a white lab coat over a military uniform. "Welcome home, Jake," the man said with a smile. "My name's Dr. Charles Webb. I've been waiting to meet you for a very long time." "You've been waiting for me?" Jake asked. "But you didn't know. I was going to get hurt." Dr. Webb's smile became sad. "It's actually We've been waiting for something like this to happen for over 50 years. You see, Jake, what happened to you wasn't an accident. It was your body finally doing what it was designed to do. Bill Morrison stepped forward. What do you mean designed to do? My son is human. Yes, he is, Dr. Webb said. But humans are not what we've always believed we were. Jake, your father, please sit down. What I'm about to tell you will change how you see everything. Dr. Webb led them to a conference table where several other scientists were waiting. The largest display screen in the room showed a picture of Earth from space, but it looked different somehow. Older. This is Earth as it was 12,000 years ago, Dr. Webb began. And this is the story that has been hidden from humanity. For all that time, the display screen changed to show images of space with stars and planets Jake had never seen before. Then it showed a world that looked like Earth but with purple oceans and 2 moons. Long ago, there was a race called the Terrans. They lived on a world called Terra Prime far from here. The Terrans were warriors and explorers who traveled between the stars. They were incredibly strong, could heal from almost any injury, and lived for hundreds of years. Jake leaned forward in his chair. What happened to them? War, Dr. Webb said simply. The Terrans made enemies of a powerful alien empire. That empire destroyed Terra Prime and hunted the Terrans across the galaxy. Most were killed, but some escaped. Small groups of Terrans fled to different worlds, hoping to hide until they were strong enough to fight back. The screen showed a small ship landing on a blue-green world that Jake recognized as Earth. One group of Terrans came here. Earth was primitive then, with no intelligent life. The Terrans decided to hide by changing themselves. They used their advanced science to alter their own genetics, making themselves weaker and shorter-lived. They became what we know as humans. Bill Morrison shook his head. That's impossible. You're saying humans are aliens? Not aliens, Doctor. Webb corrected. Humans are Terrans who chose to sleep rather than fight. The Terran abilities were never gone, just hidden deep in our genetic code. We were waiting for the right trigger to wake them up. Jake touched the back of his head where he had been injured. The Krillian hitting me was the trigger. Extreme. Trauma can activate dormant genetics, Dr. Webb explained. Your body was faced with death and responded by becoming what it was always meant to be. You're not the first, Jake. Throughout history, there have been humans who showed impossible strength or healing in moments of crisis. We've been watching and waiting for the awakening to begin. Dr. Webb pressed a button on the table, and the screen showed files marked with names and dates. Jake saw reports of soldiers who had survived direct hits from explosions, people who had walked away from car crashes that should have killed them, and individuals who had lived far longer than any human should. We call these people awakened, Dr. Webb said. There are currently 47 confirmed cases worldwide. Most awakenings are partial increased strength, better healing, longer life. But what happened to you is different. Your awakening is complete. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means you're closer to what the original Terrans were like. Your bone density is now 5 times that of a normal human. Your muscle efficiency has increased by over 400%. Your brain is processing information at speeds we can barely measure, and most importantly, your body can now repair itself from almost any injury. Jake felt overwhelmed by the information. So I'm not human anymore? You're more human than anyone else on Earth? Dr. Webb said gently. You're what humanity was always supposed to become. The question now is what we do with this knowledge. Morrison had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. Why are you telling us this? Why not keep it secret like you have been? Dr. Webb sighed. Because the secret is out? What happened on Station Omega-7 was witnessed by hundreds of aliens from dozens of species. The news has spread across the galaxy. Every major power is now asking questions about human capabilities. The screen changed to show news broadcasts from alien worlds. Jake could see his own face on screens throughout the galaxy, with text in languages he couldn't read. The Krillian High Command has declared humanity a potential threat to galactic stability, Dr. Webb continued. They're demanding that Earth surrender all awakened humans for study. The other species are taking sides. Some want to form alliances with us, others want to destroy us before we become too powerful. Jake felt a chill run through him. It's my fault. If I hadn't gotten hurt, none of this would have happened. No, Jake, Dr. Webb said firmly. This was always going to happen eventually. The Terran genetics are strong. As humanity spreads through space and faces more dangers, more awakenings would occur. You just happened to be first. Dr. Webb stood up and walked to a window that looked out over a vast underground facility. Jake could see other people training in what looked like combat exercises, moving with speed and grace that seemed impossible. Call this place the Terran Research Center, Dr. Webb said. For 50 years, we've been preparing for the day when humanity would need to remember what it really was. That day is now. Jake joined Dr. Webb at the window. What happens now? Now we teach you to control your abilities. We prepare you and others like you for what's coming, because the galaxy is about to learn that humanity is not the weak primitive species they thought we were. As Jake watched the training exercises below, he felt something stirring inside him that he had never experienced before. It wasn't just anger or fear. It was purpose. For the first time since his awakening, Jake understood that his transformation wasn't just about him. Dr. Webb, Jake said quietly, how many more people can be awakened? In theory, every human on Earth carries the dormant Terran genetics. Under the right conditions, all 7 billion humans could awaken. Jake nodded slowly. The galaxy had made a mistake when Commander Thackerell struck him down. They had woken something that had been sleeping for 12,000 years. Now they would learn what it meant to face the children of the Terrans. The boy who had been killed on Station Omega-7 was gone forever. In his place stood something much more dangerous, a human who remembered what his people used to be. Commander Thackerell stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the empty space where Station Omega-7 had been. The humans had escaped, but that didn't matter. He had tracked their ship and knew exactly where they were going. Earth was 3 days away, and his fleet was faster than any human vessel. Commander, his second-in-command said, approaching with a data pad. The High Command has sent new orders. Thackerell read the message, his red eyes growing brighter with each word. The Krillian leaders were taking the human situation very seriously. They had declared Jake Morrison and all humans like him to be threats to galactic peace. The orders were simple. Find the boy and eliminate him, along with any witnesses who might spread stories about human abilities. Prepare the fleet for Earth, Thackerell commanded, and send messages to all Krillian forces in this sector. Any human ship is to be stopped and searched. Any human showing unusual abilities is to be terminated immediately. The Krillian Empire had ruled through fear and strength for over 1,000 years. They were the police of space, the enforcers who kept weaker species in line. If humans could survive what had killed Jake Morrison, it meant the Krillians were not as superior as everyone believed. That could not be allowed. Back on Earth, Jake was learning to control his new abilities at the Terran Research Center. Dr. Webb had introduced him to other awakened humans, people who had experienced partial genetic activation over the years. There was Maria Santos, a rescue worker, who had survived a building collapse that should have crushed her. There was Kevin Park, a soldier who had walked away from an explosion that killed his entire squad. Each of them was stronger and faster than normal humans, but none were as complete as Jake's transformation. The key is not to fight the changes, Maria explained, as she showed Jake how to control his enhanced strength. Your body knows what to do, you just have to trust it. Practiced lifting weights that would have been impossible for him just days before. Metal bars bent in his hands like soft plastic. His movements were becoming more fluid and precise as his enhanced muscles learned to work together. How long have you known about all this? Jake asked Dr. Webb during a training break. My grandfather was one of the first researchers to discover the truth about human genetics, Dr. Webb replied. Found references to the Terrans in ancient texts that most people dismissed as mythology. It took decades of secret research to piece together the real story. And the government knew? A few people in the highest levels of security knew. We've been preparing for this day, hoping it would never come, but knowing it probably would. As humans spread into space and faced more dangers, awakening was inevitable. Jake was about to ask another question when alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Dr. Webb's communication device started beeping urgently. "What's happening?" Jake asked. Dr. Webb looked at his device with concern. "Krillian ships have entered Earth's solar system. They're demanding that we turn you over to them through the facility's main communication system." They could hear the message being broadcast from the alien fleet. "People of Earth, you are harboring a genetic aberration that threatens galactic stability. Surrender the human called Jake Morrison immediately, or face the consequences." Jake felt his enhanced senses picking up the tension throughout the facility. People were moving quickly through the corridors, preparing weapons and activating defense systems. But he also sensed something else: fear. The humans in the facility were afraid of the Krillian fleet. "How many ships?" Jake asked. 12 warships, Dr. Webb replied grimly. "More than enough to devastate Earth's major cities if we refuse their demands." "Then we should give them what they want," Bill Morrison said, having overheard the conversation. "I won't let the whole planet suffer because of what happened to Jake." "Dad, no," Jake said firmly. "They're not going to stop with me. If they're this scared of one awakened human, what do you think they'll do when they find out there could be billions more?" Jake was right, and everyone in the room knew it. The Krillians weren't just after him, they were trying to eliminate what they saw as a threat to their dominance over the galaxy. "There is another option," Dr. Webb said quietly. "We have a ship ready to launch. It's fast and well armed. If Jake can get off Earth and lead the Krillians away, it might buy us time to prepare our defenses." "I'm not running," Jake said, surprising himself with the determination in his voice. "These aliens think they can threaten my home and my family? It's time they learned what happens when you corner a human." Bill Morrison looked at his son with worry and pride. Jake had changed in more ways than just physically. The scared boy who had accidentally bumped into Commander Thackerel was gone. In his place was someone who looked ready for war. "The ship is called the Frontier Spirit," Dr. Webb explained. "It's equipped with the most advanced human technology we have. But Jake, you have to understand, you'll be facing an entire Krillian fleet. Even with your abilities, those are terrible odds. And I'll have to make sure the odds don't matter," Jake replied. An hour later, Jake stood in the docking bay next to the Frontier Spirit. The ship was sleek and black, designed for speed rather than comfort. His father was coming with him, despite Jake's protests. "You're still my son," Bill had said, "and I'm not letting you face this alone." As they prepared to launch, Jake felt his enhanced awareness picking up something troubling. The Krillian ships weren't just waiting in orbit. They were moving, spreading out to surround the planet. "They're not going to let us leave peacefully," Jake told Dr. Webb over the communication system. "We know," Dr. Webb replied. "Earth's defense fleet is moving to intercept them. Just focus on getting away from the planet." The Frontier Spirit launched from the underground facility, bursting out of a hidden opening in the mountainside and shooting straight up into the sky. Jake could see the Krillian ships as they broke through Earth's atmosphere, massive, dark vessels that looked like they were built for destruction. "Incoming transmission," the ship's computer announced. Commander Thackerel's voice filled the cockpit. "Human vessel, this is Commander Thackerel of the Krillian Empire. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Jake activated the communication system. "This is Jake Morrison. If you want me, come and get me." The response was immediate. 3 Krillian interceptors broke formation and raced toward the frontier. Spirit energy beams lit up space as they opened fire. Bill Morrison gripped his seat as Jake took control of the ship. The boy's enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge the alien weapons with impossible precision. The Frontier Spirit twisted and turned through space like it was dancing rather than fleeing. "How are you doing that?" Bill asked in amazement. "I can feel where the shots are going to be before they fire them," Jake replied, his enhanced senses somehow picking up the aliens' intentions. But more Krillian ships were joining the chase. Soon, the Frontier Spirit was being pursued by half the alien fleet. Energy beams crisscrossed space around them as Jake pushed the ship to its limits. "Jake, there's too many of them," Bill said as warning lights flashed throughout the cockpit. "No," Jake replied calmly. "That's what I was counting on." Before Bill could ask what he meant, Jake did something that defied all logic. He turned the ship around and flew straight toward the pursuing Krillians. "Jake, what are you doing?" Bill shouted. Something they won't expect, Jake said. Hold on tight. This is going to get rough. The lead Krillian ship fired its main weapons, energy beams that should have vaporized the small human vessel. But Jake's enhanced reflexes were faster than the alien computers could calculate. The frontier spirit slipped between the beams like a needle through cloth. Then Jake did something that made Commander Thackerell's blood run cold. The human ship collided with the lead Krillian interceptor, not accidentally, but with perfect precision. The impact tore through the alien vessel's hull, disabling it completely. Impossible, Thackerell whispered as he watched the human ship emerge from the wreckage. Damaged, but still flying. But Jake wasn't done. His enhanced mind was processing battle tactics at incredible speed, seeing patterns and opportunities that no normal human could perceive. He guided the frontier spirit through the Krillian formation like a shark through a school of fish. Using the aliens' own size and numbers against them, 2 more Krillian ships were damaged in collisions before. The remaining vessels realized what was happening. The human wasn't running from them. He was hunting them. All ships fall back, Thackerell ordered, his voice shaking with something he had never felt before. Fear as the Krillian fleet retreated to a safe distance. Jake Morrison floated in space aboard his damaged ship. He'd faced an entire alien fleet and survived. More importantly, he had shown them that humans were not the helpless prey they had believed. Jake, his father said quietly, "What have you become?" Jake looked at his hands, which were steady, despite everything they had just experienced. "I've become what the galaxy made me become, Dad. And this is just the beginning." News of the battle near Earth spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On thousands of worlds, aliens watched recordings of a single human ship defeating multiple Krillian interceptors. The footage was impossible to believe, but it had been recorded by dozens of different sources. On the insectoid world of Vex Prime, the merchant councils chittered in amazement as they watched Jake Morrison's ship dance through enemy fire. On the crystalline cities of Zephyr, the floating beings dimmed their light bodies in what might have been respect or fear. Even the proud Altaers, who rarely showed emotion, gathered in groups to discuss what this meant for the galaxy. But nowhere was the reaction stronger than on Krylon, the Krillian homeworld, in the great war chambers beneath the planet's surface. The Krillian High Command watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. "This is impossible," growled War Master Kethfer, the supreme leader of all Krillian forces.
Ow.
"Our ships are finest in the galaxy. Our warriors are unbeatable in combat. How did one human boy defeat 6 of our interceptors?" General Morthic, Sekarel's superior, studied the recordings with growing concern. "Look at the way the human moves. His ship responds to threats before our weapons even fire. It's like he can predict the future." "No," Kethfer said firmly. "Humans are weak. They are a primitive species that barely knows how to travel between stars. There must be another explanation." But as they watched Jake Morrison's ship perform maneuvers that should have been impossible, even the most stubborn Krillian leaders began to doubt what they thought they knew about humanity. Back on Earth, Jake and his father had returned to the Terran Research Center. The frontier spirit was badly damaged, but it had served its purpose. The galaxy now knew that humans were not helpless victims. "The communication networks are going crazy," Dr. Webb reported, as Jake sat in the medical bay getting his injuries treated. "Every major news service in the galaxy is talking about what happened. Some are calling you the first human warrior. Others are saying you're proof that Earth has been hiding its true military capabilities." Jake winced as Dr. Ross cleaned a cut on his forehead. Even with his enhanced healing, the battle had left him with several injuries. "What's Earth's government saying about all this?" "It's the interesting part," Dr. Webb replied. "They're not saying anything yet, but I think that's about to change." Jake's enhanced hearing picked up movement in the corridors outside. Important people were arriving at the facility. He could tell by the way everyone was suddenly more tense and formal. A few minutes later, the medical bay doors opened, and a woman in an expensive suit walked in. She had the confident walk of someone used to being in charge of important things. "Jake Morrison," she said with a slight smile. "I'm Ambassador Lucy Carter, a representative government in all dealings with alien species. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Am I in trouble? Jake asked. Quite the opposite, Ambassador Carter replied. You've given us an opportunity we never expected to have. The galaxy has seen what one awakened human can do. Now it's time they learn the truth about all of us. Dr. Webb looked surprised. You're going public with Operation Lazarus? We don't have a choice, Ambassador Carter said. Out. Alien governments are demanding answers about human capabilities. We can either tell them the truth or let them make up their own stories. I think the truth will serve us better. Over the next few hours, Jake watched as the Terran Research Center transformed into a communication hub. Diplomats, scientists, and military officers worked together to prepare what Ambassador Carter called the most important announcement in human history. What are you going to tell them? Jake asked. Everything, Ambassador Carter replied. The truth about the Terrans, about the genetic awakening, about what humanity really is. For too long, we've hidden in the shadows, pretending to be weaker than we are. That ends today. Jake felt nervous about the announcement, but also excited. For days he had felt like he was carrying a huge secret. Soon, everyone would know what he had discovered about himself and his species. The galactic announcement was broadcast from the United Nations. Building in New York, representatives from every major alien species were present, either in person or through holographic projection. Ambassador Carter stood at the center of the Great Assembly Hall, with Jake beside her. Citizens of the galaxy, Ambassador Carter began, her voice being translated into hundreds of alien languages simultaneously. For centuries, humanity has been seen as a young, weak species that barely deserves a place among the stars. Today I'm here to tell you that everything you think you know about humans is wrong. The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some of the Krillian representatives looked openly hostile. Humans are not native to Earth, Ambassador Carter continued. We are the descendants of an ancient warrior race called the Terrans, who fled to our world 12,000 years ago to escape persecution. The Terrans were powerful beings who could heal from terrible injuries, who possessed strength far beyond their size, and who lived for centuries. Gasps and angry chittering came from various alien delegates. The Vex representatives buzzed loudly among themselves. Zephyrian forms flickered with what might have been surprise. When the Terrans came to Earth, they chose to hide their abilities. Rather than fight, they altered their own genetics to appear weak and harmless. For 12 millennia, humans have carried this dormant power in our DNA, waiting for the right conditions to awaken it. Ambassador Carter gestured to Jake, who stepped forward despite feeling nervous in front of so many alien eyes. Jake Morrison is the first human to experience complete genetic awakening in modern times, but he will not be the last. Under the right circumstances, any human can access these dormant abilities. All 7 billion humans on Earth carry the potential to become what Jake has become. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Several alien delegates stood up and began shouting in their native languages. The Krillian War Master, Gatar, who was attending via hologram, slammed his 4 fists on his table. This is a threat to galactic peace, Thektar roared. If humans can all become warriors like this boy, they will upset the balance of power that has kept our world stable for centuries. The balance of power was already upset, Ambassador Carter replied calmly. It was upset the moment your commander attacked an innocent human child. Jake Morrison did not choose to awaken his abilities. Your violence forced the awakening upon him. Jake found his voice and stepped closer to the microphone. I didn't want any of this to happen. I was just a normal kid who wanted to see the galaxy with his father. But when that Krillian soldier hit me, he woke up something that had been sleeping for thousands of years. Now the galaxy has to deal with the consequences. And what are those consequences? Asked Counselor Vexi of the Merchant Councils. Jake looked directly at the Krillian delegates. The consequences are that humans will no longer hide what we are. We will no longer pretend to be weak when we are strong. And we will no longer allow anyone to threaten our people without facing the results. Ambassador Carter took control of the microphone again. Earth is announcing the formation of the Terran Guard, a military organization dedicated to protecting human interests throughout the galaxy. Jake Morrison will be its first official member. We are also beginning controlled awakening procedures. For volunteers who wish to access their dormant abilities, the announcement sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Within hours, some alien governments were calling for emergency sessions to discuss the human threat. Others were requesting meetings to discuss possible alliances. The Krillian Empire issued a statement declaring humans to be dangerous genetic aberrations that needed to be contained. But privately, their military leaders were already redesigning their strategies. The easy dominance they had enjoyed for centuries was over. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Earth battleship New Terra, watching as a fleet of human vessels prepared to depart for the outer colonies. Each ship carried newly awakened humans who would establish Earth's presence as a major galactic power. His father joined him at the window. "Do you ever regret what happened on that station?" Jake touched the spot where his skull had been fractured, feeling the reinforced bone beneath his skin. "No, Dad. That Krillian commander thought he was teaching me a lesson about respecting superior beings. Instead, he taught the galaxy a lesson about what happens when you underestimate humans." Below them, the last of the human ships activated its engines and disappeared into hyperspace. The age of human subservience was over. Children of the Terrans had finally come home to the stars. Jake smiled as he watched the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, other humans were discovering what they really were. The galaxy had awakened sleeping giants, and nothing would ever be the same again.